If you care about moving and feeling your best, I bet you subscribe to the channel hoping for some helpful tips. And while there's plenty for you here already, you might have noticed that I stopped posting. In fact, it's been several months since my last upload, and that may have left you wondering where I've been, what I've been up to, or maybe not. But in this video, regardless, I want to give you a little bit of an explanation and also an update. Now, my reasons may or may not surprise you, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to help you to navigate this evolving digital landscape, if you will, of movement information, not only here on YouTube, but also on other platforms as well. So for the rest of this video, I'll give you my unfiltered take about movement and what I've got planned for you next. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so first of all, let's go all the way back to the start. The reason that I started this channel in the first place was to help people who have chronic pain to move and feel better. Now, as someone who struggled with pain for more than a decade, and to this day, I really felt compelled. It wasn't so much like, oh, I want to start a brand and have a business. It was more around, I really feel like I have to help people. Like, this is my true calling. And at the time, I was working in a PT clinic as a staff PT, and I was using a lot of movement correction style coaching, as well as respiration focused drills like you might see in PRI. And at that time, I was also in the midst of, very deep, in figuring out my own chronic issues. So many of those old videos, those initial ones, they did really, really well. And I think in large part, that's probably due to the fact that I had experienced some of the benefits that I was talking about from those techniques very recently. So I had this great enthusiasm that really came across. And of course, that helps with engagement. Now, it also happened at the same time, these approaches were becoming increasingly popular. And it just so happened that I was probably one of the few who was talking about them at the time, especially on YouTube. So as time went on and I started working with folks from all around the world, the picture became clearer. And unfortunately, that picture actually wasn't super pretty. Now, it became clear that not only were there serious flaws in the assumptions of these systems, but the content out there, even some of my content, was not having a very positive effect on a lot of individuals that were suffering with chronic pain. Now, again, as someone who went through this personally, I felt, no pun intended, an asymmetry that was evolving between what I was talking about online and what I actually believed and what I did with clients, right? And this asymmetry, if you will, it wasn't present in the beginning, but as time went on, as I got better data, better experience, and was working with people, I became more aware of these issues. Now, there was another thing happening along the way as well, which was just more of a logistical one, which was that I got busy working with people, right? So once I had enough inflow of leads and enough people on my roster and retained most of them, then I just became busy. And I didn't really need to post more videos to get more people. And at that same time, I was becoming even more disillusioned with the types of content that was out there and doing well, right? And I just didn't feel good about contributing to that. I didn't feel good posting in the style that I knew would get clicks and likes, but I also knew wasn't really helpful and even potentially harmful for the people that, I was hoping to help. So at this time, I'm having this crisis of sorts where I no longer felt like I could be helpful if I did the same thing. And again, being helpful is my core value, my number one core value, in fact. So I recognized that these approaches out there that I was talking about were incorrect. And many of the patterns that I was noticing in people I was working with, as well as myself, were not only deviating from these usual descriptions, but also in many cases requiring and benefiting from interventions that were directly the opposite of what was being proposed. And so I started just seeing way too many inconsistencies, right? And not only that, I started to realize that the people who were talking about this stuff were just getting a lot wrong. And it left me very jaded, first of all, and then second of all, a tiny bit confused, because I realized that there was one of two things going on. The first possibility was that they were right and I was wrong, right? And now looking back on it, it was probably unlikely because I've got a higher level of education than they do. I've been in the game longer than they have. I've worked with some of the best people all around the world, and I've obsessed with this stuff literally from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed for the last 14 years, right? I've been super motivated to study this stuff because it's personal for me. This isn't some business venture. I never wanted to be into this in the first place. I'm a musician. There was no reason for me to do this except I wanted to help myself. this business became an extension of me figuring it out on my own and then wanting to share it. Again, feeling compelled to share it, right? So you could say that I really eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, no pun intended. But again, I didn't think that they were getting it right and I was getting it wrong, okay? Now, the second possibility here was that they were just parroting stuff that they'd heard and just saying what they needed to say for clicks and likes. And of course, this second one is much more likely. And since then, this has been confirmed by several sources. So unfortunately, at the time, I didn't really know this. And like a lot of coaches, with my confidence kind of shattered and feeling more confused, I went back to the drawing board trying to kind of make sense of this conflicting information, right? Were they getting it right and I was getting it wrong, but somehow I'm still getting really good results with my clients by doing the exact opposite things, right? And then at the same time, I'm noticing all the negative impact of this content online. So anyways, given these observations, I kind of knew that I needed to change course, right? If I wanted to be helpful, I needed to stop associating with these people and I needed to let people know that there's a better way to do this. And so for me to be effective in doing this and to be able to help not just the 20 people who are on my roster, but everyone, as many people as I could, I needed to do a couple of things. The first was I needed to map out my method, right? And in doing that, I needed to parse out what do I know to be true to get people results? And then what is the stuff that I've just kind of thought is correct because I've heard it a bunch of times, right? And this is a process that I think any coach should go through. And through this process, I had to develop questions and really just challenge everything I knew, right? Now, the second thing I needed to do was identify the unhelpful beliefs and actions that ultimately create barriers for people and get in the way of results, right? And then make sure that as I'm putting together my methodology, I'm accounting for these things, right? Because we can never help everyone, but we can increase the probability that we don't place barriers in people's way. And the last thing I want to do is do that. Now, last but not least here, the third thing is I needed to take my method and then distill it into actionable tips that can create results, not just on that moment-to-moment, one-on-one basis with someone that I'm working with, in real time, but also someone who's going to get that program and do it on their own. And that's pretty hard, right? Now, all this process is nearing to an end, and I've created a lot of helpful things I'm going to talk about at the end of the video. But first, I want to cover the unhelpful beliefs that my programs are hopefully going to account for here. And I'm hoping that these are going to help you to understand some of the things out there that are not quite true that may be standing in your way of moving and feeling the way that you deserve. So this is no particular order here, but number one is going to be the idea that certain movements are bad and others are good. Now, you go online, and the way that online works, which you're probably aware of, but just to break it down, there's a thumbnail and a title, and it grabs your attention, and it's all based around what people are searching for. So if people are searching for anterior pelvic tilt, for example, you're going to see a ton of videos about that, and the titles are always something like fix anterior pelvic tilt, key to fixing anterior pelvic tilt. Well, if you see that enough times, you're going to start to make an association in your brain, anterior pelvic tilt is bad, and thus the solution is posterior pelvic tilt. That's just one example. Now, certain creators, they'll just commit to a narrative one way or the other, and they'll go, anterior pelvic tilt, everyone has it, it's bad, everyone needs to do this. And it makes it real simple for them because they can sell everyone the same solution and give people that certainty. But this is not true. This is not actually accurate. And if you have any experience working with people and you have any degree of ethics, you wouldn't actually put out this message, right? You'd kind of present both sides of that coin. Because the truth is, when you're working with people in a clinical practice, what you end up seeing is that people that have lower back pain, they're going to have it with flexion and extension, so arching and bending. And if someone is saying that it's like arching is bad and bending is good, you just know that they are either lying through their teeth to sell something, right? Or they have no experience and don't understand what they're talking about. Neither of those are good. Now, the reason we need to know that there are no good and bad movements is once we know that, then what we can do is we can look at our whole system, all the movements we have available, and then say, we've got these that we can do, and we've got these that we can't do. Let's maintain access to the ones we can do while bringing up and getting better at the ones that we can't do. And so that way we're not afraid to move how we're moving, but we're also increasing those overall options. So we have many ways to move. And that's what is going to characterize a healthy movement system. All right, number two. This is wrong. You need asymmetrical approaches to address asymmetry. This is not true. No, you don't. Let's talk about asymmetry first overall. So when we look at a human and we look at them moving through space, visual asymmetry would be like a shoulder lower than the other, head cocked to one side, that kind of a thing. Appearing symmetrical would be square shoulders, level head. But if we were to look inside a human, all humans are asymmetrical. And even the most symmetrically appearing person is actually asymmetrical underneath, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. But you're never going to make yourself symmetrical from a structural standpoint, but you could make yourself able to represent symmetry visually, right? Now, in order to do this from a movement standpoint, you need access to two things. The first, which is the most specific, is access to the middle of the different movements, right? So we can bend forward, back, we can go side to side, we can rotate side to side. In between all of those motions, so not bent, not rotated, right? Not to either direction, just dead in the middle of those three planes is this kind of neutral or middle zone. And that's exactly what you would train if you were doing something like a barbell squat, right? Now, if you can, in a barbell squat, move both sides of your body at the same time in the same way without biasing side bend, rotation, flexion, or extension, then you're perfectly in the middle. That is symmetry. Now, in order to rest there with ease, you probably need access to the extremes, right? So if I can bend all the way to the right, but I can't bend back to the left, then my middle between those two extremes is probably going to be somewhere over here. If I increase access to the far end of the extremes over here to be equal to what I have over here, then I can probably rest in the middle, right? So real simple. If you want to be symmetrical, symmetrical exercises are not only not bad, but they are necessary for you to be able to do that. In fact, if you can't do symmetrical exercises, you'll never be symmetrical. Okay, number 3. This is a big one. It's the belief that you need a special exercise or the right exercise. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the exercises you do don't matter. Let that sink in for a second. Okay, now let's back up a little bit. Certain exercises are better than other exercises at helping you develop an awareness of the skill that you're trying to get from them. Okay, so if you do something that's scaled back from a certain training activity in order to master a certain movement skill, that's fine. But it's not the exercise, it's what you're getting from it. And in many cases, if not most cases, we can get from our normal training fitness type activities the same skill development or better skill development than we would from something that's very scaled back. A lot of people have the idea that they need to do some sort of special floor-based mobility drill to then be able to squat better. When in reality, the best thing they could probably do is understand, why is it that I'm squatting this way? And how can I change the squat to have a better squat, right? This is called the specificity principle. And usually what's better is we'll take that squat, change the constraint, the cue, or modify it in some way such that we get that squat to look closer to what we want to without changing it to something that isn't a squat, right? So you're better off taking your health and performance related goals first, choose exercises based on them, then learn how to modify those exercises to fit your movement skill development needs. All right, number 4, the idea that you need to move well before you move more, right? And the idea is, okay, if we're moving in a compensatory way, then we need to fix those compensations first. And then once we fix those compensations, then we've earned the right to move more. This idea is dead wrong. And let's think about it in the example of learning anything else. Like, let's say you're trying to learn the guitar. If you're trying to learn the guitar and someone says, hey, before you can play that song, you got to make sure you can play well. Wait, what? I can't play until I can play well? What does that mean, right? The best way to get good at a song is to play a fucking song. The best way to get good at doing a squat is to do a fucking squat, right? Do the thing that you're trying to get better at and you'll get better at it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't also include exercises that break down components of that skill to get better at them. But again, the further away you get from doing the thing you're trying to do, the less carryover you're going to experience, right? So if we want to improve how we move, we have to move more first to give us the exposures necessary to develop the skill to actually get better at it, right? And again, the specificity principle applies here for sure, okay? All right, so last but not least here, this is gonna be number 5, okay? You need to breathe correctly before you can move. And this idea is absolutely hilarious. So this is not true. Breathing is like movement. In fact, it is movement, right? There are better and worse ways to breathe within a specific context, but there is no one best way to breathe, okay? So we want to learn a number of different ways to breathe and apply them correctly. That's useful, but trying to only breathe one way or say there's one way to breathe, that's totally wrong. I'll give you an example. Let's say we're doing a squat. We have the bar on the back. I'm gonna take a big breath in because that breath in is gonna expand my rib cage. It's gonna have my diaphragm push down, increase pressure in my abdomen. Those things are gonna help me to maintain the shape of my body that I need and create the pressures in my body that I need to be able to do that movement efficiently. If I exhale, get all the air out because I'm inhaled, because somebody told me that online, well, I'm not gonna create the shape I need and I'm not gonna create the pressures I need to be able to do that effectively. So again, context matters. Now, with all these things, I've created some solutions here to help you combat these unhelpful beliefs, and I've got 3 programs for you. The first, if you're interested in breathing, is the Breathwork Breakthrough 7-Day Challenge. It will teach you each day an essential breathing technique. If you've already got the challenge from 2021, just go into your existing members area. The updates are there. If you haven't got it, you're gonna have access to both of those versions. And again, we're not only teaching you what the techniques are, but when you would want to apply them in the underlying theories, so you can understand why you might use a specific technique over another in a certain context. All right. The second, and what I think is going to interest most people, are my Movement Foundations programs. These are going to teach you the foundational skills method, and there's 3 of these. So there's one for upper body, one for core, and one for lower body. You're going to be able to do these between about 4 and 8 weeks. I have beginner, intermediate, and advanced training logs that influence the timing depending on what your exact needs are. And again, these are improving your ability to demonstrate these movement skills, improving how you move so that you can improve both strength and mobility. Okay, so once again, upper body, lower body, and core, learning all the foundational movement skills. Now, last but not least, we have Total Body Restoration. This is my flagship educational program where I'm going to dive deep into the applications of my method. We're going to focus mainly on integrating progressive programming. So that's all the way from floor-based stuff all the way up through high-level strength and conditioning. And this is going to be great for pros and very motivated enthusiasts who want to learn to design and coach their own rehab and training programs. Now, you can find all of these in the link in the description or via my website or via my mailing list. So go ahead, check out those offers. Again, my goal in 2025 and beyond is to help you and your clients move and feel your best. So if you've made it this far, you know how this goes. As always, thanks for listening. And until next time, peace.